My name is Nora Bennett. I am 33 years old, and 3 days before my wedding, my mother called to tell me she would not be walking me down the aisle. It was Wednesday afternoon. I was standing beneath a magnifying lamp in my restoration studio, repairing a hairline fracture in a 19th century porcelain bowl. The bowl had survived 2 wars, a house fire, 3 generations of one family, and a moving company that had packed it beneath a cast-iron bookend. Under the light, the crack looked like a thin, white river. My gloves were covered in clay dust when my phone vibrated beside the brushes. "Mom," I answered with my wrist. "Nora," she said, "I need you to listen before you react." That sentence had introduced nearly every betrayal in my family. I removed one glove. "What happened?" She drew in a slow breath. "I'm not walking you down the aisle on Saturday." For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the ventilation fan above the kiln. I looked at the bowl. The crack was still open. So was something inside me. "Why?" "Elise is not doing well." Elise was my older sister, 36 years old, married for 12 years, 2 daughters, a white colonial house in Fairfield County, a life arranged so carefully for photographs that no one was supposed to notice her husband had disappeared from them. My mother continued in the careful tone she used when she had already made a decision and wanted me to believe we were discussing it. "She says watching me walk you into a new marriage would be unbearable right now. This is my wedding." "I know. Then why are we organizing it around Elise?" "She is in a fragile place." "She has been in a fragile place every time something good happened to me." "That is unfair." "What did she threaten you with?" My mother went silent. That was answer enough. "Emma and Grace?" I asked. Her voice dropped. "She said she needs space, and that if I publicly take your side, I should not expect to see the girls until after Christmas." There it was. The weapon. My nieces were not children in my family anymore. They were bargaining chips with backpacks. My mother said, "You know how much those girls mean to me. And you know how much Saturday means to me. This is different." Of course it was. Everything involving me had always been different. Smaller. More flexible. Easier to postpone. My father had died 11 years earlier. A month after his funeral, my mother had sat beside me, on the back steps of our family home, and promised that when I got married, she would walk beside me in his place. She repeated that promise when Owen proposed. She repeated it again at my final dress fitting. 3 promises. 1 threat from Elise. The threat won. "Are you still coming?" I asked. "I think it would be best if I sat quietly in the back." 72 hours later, 180 people would turn toward the doors of Alder Mill, expecting to see me enter on my mother's arm. My mother would be sitting in the last row. And the secret she was helping my sister protect was much bigger than a troubled marriage. If you have ever watched a family defend the person creating the chaos while blaming the person who finally says no, like this video and subscribe to Calm Deception Stories. What my mother left out of that phone call would change the way I understood my entire family. I grew up in West Haven, Massachusetts, in a gray colonial house with black shutters and a maple tree that dropped leaves into the gutters faster than my father could clear them. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where people knew who had replaced a roof, remodeled a kitchen, or bought a new car, but did not know which families ate dinner in silence. Elise was the daughter my parents understood. She liked things with rankings. Honor rolls, debate trophies, mock trial medals, class elections. She knew how to stand beneath fluorescent lights holding a certificate and look as though the future had selected her personally. My father introduced her at neighborhood parties with the same sentence. "This is Elise, she's going to be an attorney." He began saying it when she was 12. By 14, she smiled as if the verdict had already been delivered. I was the daughter who came home with dried clay beneath my fingernails. I liked broken objects. Not because they were broken. Because they had survived long enough to become worth saving. When I was 13, my art teacher gave me a box of shattered porcelain from the school storage room. Most students saw garbage. I saw blue flowers, gold borders, and a painted hand no larger than my thumbnail. I spent 6 weeks rebuilding a tea set from the fragments. The result was not perfect. One cup was missing half its handle. The teapot lid tilted slightly to the left. Several fractures remained visible under the glaze. But together, the pieces looked like proof that damage did not have to be the final chapter. My teacher entered the tea set in the Massachusetts Young Artists Exhibition. I won first place in applied arts. The award ceremony took place on the same Saturday as Elise's regional mock trial final. My parents promised to split the day. Dad would attend Elise's competition. Mom would come to my exhibition. At 11 that morning, I stood beside the restored tea set in a navy dress Aunt June had helped me choose. Other parents took photographs. My art teacher adjusted the ribbon on my display board twice because she needed something to do with her hands. My mother never arrived. At 12:40, after the judges had finished their remarks and the gallery staff had begun stacking chairs, she came through the doors carrying 2 coffees. Elise's team went into an extra round, she said. Her eyes moved briefly to the blue ribbon beside my display. That's wonderful, honey. Then she checked her watch. We need to leave. Your sister's team is having lunch. I remember looking at the tea set. I remember the repaired fractures. I remember thinking that if I stood still enough, perhaps I could become one of the objects on the table, something people admired briefly before walking away. At dinner that evening, Dad asked Elise to reenact her closing argument. She stood near the fireplace and performed the final 2 minutes while he recorded her. My ribbon remained in my coat pocket. No one asked to see it. I still have that ribbon. Its blue has faded into gray. Some childhood memories do that. They lose color without losing weight. When I was 17, I was accepted into the conservation program at the Rhode Island School of Design. I found out on a Monday. Elise learned she had been admitted to Georgetown Law on Tuesday. My parents combined the celebrations that Friday at a restaurant called Bellini's. 12 people came. My grandparents, Aunt June, 2 neighbors, 3 family friends. There were 3 speeches. Every one of them was about Elise. My father raised his glass to the first Bennett lawyer. My mother cried before finishing her first sentence. Elise thanked them for believing in her plan. I sat beside the breadbasket and smiled in every photograph. At the end of the meal, Aunt June leaned toward me and whispered, "I'm proud of you too." 2. 1 syllable. A small life raft dropped into deep water. My parents paid Elise's law school tuition. They called it an investment. When I showed them my financial aid package, my mother read the first page, placed it on the table and said, "You cannot expect us to spend that kind of money so you can glue old plates together." I worked 2 jobs. Weekdays in the campus archive. Weekends at an antique store near Wickenden Street. I learned how to identify pigments, stabilize paper, reverse old adhesives, repair ceramic fractures, and make myself small enough not to require help. Elise graduated without debt. I graduated owing $48,000 and possessing a skill my mother continued to call a hobby. For years, I thought independence was a personality trait. It took me much longer to understand that sometimes independence is what grows when asking becomes more painful than carrying everything alone. My father understood my work better than my mother did. Not completely, but enough to try. He was an accountant, a man who trusted numbers because they stayed where you placed them. Art made him nervous. Broken art made even less sense. Still, he attended my first student exhibition. He stood before a restored porcelain figurine for 11 minutes while I explained how I had matched the glaze. When I finished, he nodded. "You have steady hands." It was not a speech. It did not undo years of being second. But I kept it. I kept every good thing my father gave me because there were never enough to waste. He died when I was 22. A brain aneurysm. No long illness. No warning. One morning, he stood in the kitchen, asking whether the coffee machine had been descaled. By evening, he was gone. A month after the funeral, my mother and I sat on the back steps after everyone else had stopped bringing casseroles. I told her I could not imagine getting married one day without him. She took my hand. "When that day comes, I'll walk with you," she said. "You won't do it alone." I believed her because grief makes promises feel sacred. After my father's death, Elise became the center of the family in a new way. She was already married to Daniel Cross, a commercial real estate attorney with expensive coats, perfect teeth, and the ability to glance at his phone during conversations without appearing embarrassed. Emma was born the following year. Grace came 3 years later. My mother's grief found somewhere to go. She drove to Elise's house 4 times a week. She stocked their freezer. She attended preschool concerts, dentist appointments, dance recitals, school fundraisers, and events no one else knew required an audience. I did not resent my nieces. I loved them. That was what made Elise's leverage so effective. The first time she used the girls to control my mother, it was over Christmas morning. Elise wanted everyone at her house by 7. I had agreed to spend breakfast with Aunt June, who had recently finished chemotherapy and lived alone. My mother called and told me to cancel. Elise wants the girls to open gifts with the whole family. Aunt Juna's family. You can see her another day. I refused. Elise told Mom that if I did not attend, she would take the girls to Daniel's parents for the entire holiday. My mother called me 3 times. On the third call, she said, "Why do you always make things difficult?" I spent Christmas morning with Aunt June. My mother did not speak to me for 11 days. The second time involved Emma's baptism. Elise disliked the color of my dress. She told my mother the family photograph would look unbalanced. My mother asked me to stand near the edge so the photographer could crop me out if necessary. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She was not. The third time involved money. My father left a modest investment account to be divided equally between us. It was not a fortune, just under $60,000. Elise asked for the entire amount as a temporary loan because Daniel's real estate partnership had cash flow problems. I said no. My mother transferred her half anyway and pressured me to do the same. When I refused, Elise kept the girls away for 6 weeks. My mother left a voicemail saying, "You may be legally entitled to that money, but morally, you know what the right thing is." Daniel's partnership recovered. The money did not return. No one mentioned repayment. 3 years later, I opened Second Fire Conservation in a former textile warehouse outside Boston. The first room had concrete floors, 2 windows, 1 cracked sink, and an electrical system that failed whenever I used the kiln and the kettle at the same time. I rented the space because it was cheap. I stayed because it became mine. At first, I repaired family heirlooms, wedding china, ceramic lamps, painted tiles, porcelain dolls that had survived children, attics, floods, divorces, and one memorable Labrador. Then, small museums began sending pieces. Private collectors followed. A hotel commissioned me to restore a mosaic wall from 1912. A historical society hired me to teach public workshops. I added a second room, then a third. My mother still called the business Nora's Little Repair Shop. Elise called it the Broken Dish Place. The year my company earned more than Elise's legal salary, she stopped asking about it entirely. 4 months before my wedding, I submitted a proposal to the Boston Children's Recovery Center. They wanted to create a ceramic studio for teenagers recovering from traumatic injuries. My proposal included adaptive work tables, a kiln room, an exhibition wall, and a program where students could decide whether to conceal damage or make it visible. I spent 6 weeks designing it. When I told my mother, she asked whether the project paid well. When I told Maggie, she read all 42 pages and returned them covered in pencil notes. I met Owen Hale when I was 30. He was the architect overseeing restoration of the old Lexington Theater. I had been hired to stabilize decorative ceramic panels in the lobby. The building had no heat. It was February. I was standing on scaffolding wearing 2 pairs of socks and arguing with a contractor about vibration damage when Owen approached carrying a thermos. "You are either very brave or very cold," he said. "Those are not mutually exclusive." He offered me the thermos. "Coffee, black. How do you know how I take it?" I asked the contractor. "You were terrifying." That was our first real conversation. Our first date took place at a 24-hour diner because restoration schedules are hostile to normal meals. Owen ordered pie before dinner. I told him that was reckless. He said linear dessert rules were a form of social control. I laughed hard enough to spill water. Owen did not try to rescue me from my family. That mattered. People who watch someone they love being mistreated often want to become heroes. They confront, they threaten, they demand that you leave before you are ready. Owen never did that. He asked questions. "What do you need? Do you want advice or company? What would make you feel safe?" He did not drag me out of old patterns. He stood beside me until I could see the door. His mother, Margaret Hale, was 64 when I met her. Everyone called her Maggie except former museum directors, who still called her Dr. Hale. She had spent 37 years as a ceramics conservator at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. The first time Owen brought me to her house, I was not normally nervous. I was professionally terrified. Maggie had published papers I studied in graduate school. She had restored objects featured in textbooks. Her name appeared in footnotes. She opened the door wearing wool socks and a sweatshirt with paint on one sleeve. "You must be Nora," she said. "Owen says you argue with contractors." "Good. Come inside." Her house smelled like tea, beeswax, and old books. At dinner, she did not begin by asking where I studied. She asked what object had taught me the most. I told her about the broken tea set from middle school. She listened as though the answer mattered. The following week, she visited my studio. She walked through every room slowly, touching nothing. When she reached my main workbench, she noticed the left side sagged by half an inch. She returned 2 days later with a carpenter and a support frame. I told her she did not have to do that. I know, she said, but watching you work on a crooked table was making me hostile. Maggie was not endlessly gentle. She was blunt. She believed decorative pockets were a personal insult. She gave advice before being asked, then became offended when Owen reminded her she had promised not to. She labeled food in her refrigerator with dates and once threw away an entire Thanksgiving gravy because it had been left out for 34 minutes. But when she showed up completely. She sent me conservation articles with notes in the margins. She referred clients without demanding credit. She attended my first public lecture and sat in the second row because she said the first row made speakers nervous. When my kiln control board failed during a major commission, she stayed at the studio until 2 in the morning while we transferred pieces into a borrowed unit across town. When I apologized for keeping her awake, she said, "There are worse reasons to lose sleep than helping someone save her work." My mother knew about the kiln failure. She texted, "Hope it works out." Maggie carried 40-pound crates down icy steps. 6 months after Owen and I began dating, Maggie gave me a wooden tool case. It had belonged to her first mentor. Inside were bone folders, brushes, small knives, measuring tools, and brass calipers worn smooth near the hinge. On the underside of the lid, one sentence had been painted in small black letters. "Repair honestly, do not pretend the break never happened." I read it twice. Then I cried in her kitchen. Not because of the tools. Because she had seen exactly what kind of person I was trying to become. Owen proposed in my studio on a Sunday morning. No crowd. No photographer. No violinist emerging from behind a shelf. He placed a plain gold ring beside the porcelain cup I was repairing and waited until I noticed it. I looked at the ring. Then at him. "Is this part of the treatment plan?" "I'm hoping it is preventive conservation." I said yes before he finished his next sentence. That evening, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. When I told her, she was silent for 4 seconds. Then she asked, "Has Elise heard yet?" Not whether I was happy. Not how Owen proposed. Not what the ring looked like. Whether Elise knew. "No. You should let me tell her carefully. She has been sensitive." I looked across the room at Owen. He was pretending not to listen while standing close enough to catch me if the conversation went badly. "Mom, I'm not announcing my engagement like a medical emergency." "You know what I mean." I did. I always knew what she meant. Elise's feelings were glass. Mine were packing material. We set the wedding for the following October at Alder Mill, a restored brick textile building beside the river. Owen had worked on part of the renovation. I loved the tall windows, iron beams, old floorboards, and the way late afternoon light turned the brick gold. Because my father was gone, I asked my mother to walk me down the aisle. She cried. She held both my hands. I would be honored. For one reckless moment, I believed her. At my final dress fitting, she brought my grandmother Beatrice's porcelain brooch. It was oval, painted with tiny cobalt blue violets, framed in silver. Grandmother wore it at her wedding. According to her will, it belonged to me. My mother had kept it locked in her jewelry box until my engagement because she said she was afraid it would be damaged. At the fitting, she pinned it inside my dress near my heart. "Something old," she said. I looked at our reflection. I wanted to remember us that way. 2 weeks before the wedding, Mom called and asked whether Elise could borrow the brooch for one evening. What for? "A family dinner." What family dinner? With Daniel and his parents. Why does she need my brooch? She thinks wearing something from Grandma might remind everyone what matters. That answer felt wrong. "Is Daniel still in Chicago?" My mother hesitated. Elise had told everyone he was spending most of the month in Chicago for a development project. "Yes," Mom said too quickly. "He's coming back for the dinner." I refused. The following afternoon, my mother used the emergency key to enter my apartment while I was at the studio. The brooch disappeared from the locked drawer in my bedroom. When I confronted her, she admitted taking it. "It was one evening," she said. "You entered my home and took something that belongs to me." Elise needed help. With what? Keeping her family together. By wearing my brooch? You are being deliberately difficult. Bring it back. Nora, bring it back. She returned it 3 days later. The clasp was bent. One painted violet had been scratched. Elise claimed it caught on the seatbelt. My mother told me not to be materialistic. I repaired the scratch myself. I replaced the clasp. Then I moved the brooch into the locked cabinet at my studio. I did not know then that the family dinner had actually been a meeting with Daniel, his parents, and a financial advisor. Elise had wanted the brooch because it helped complete the image she was trying to sell. A devoted wife. A responsible mother. A Bennett woman carrying family history on her chest. The image mattered, because the truth underneath it was beginning to surface. Against Owen's advice and my own better judgment, I kept my mother in the wedding. Part of me was still 13, standing beside a repaired tea set, watching the gallery door. Part of me still believed arrival was possible if I waited long enough. Then Wednesday came. 3 days before the wedding. "I'm not walking you down the aisle," my mother said. I placed the phone on speaker and removed my other glove. "Did Elise threaten you with the girls?" "She did not threaten me." "What did she say?" "She said she cannot expose Emma and Grace to a family event where everyone is pretending her life is not falling apart. That is not a reason for you to abandon me." "Do not use that word." "What word would you prefer?" "I am trying to prevent a permanent break in this family." "No. You are trying to keep Elise from becoming angry." "She needs me." "And I don't?" The television played in the background. A game show audience applauded strangers. My mother said, "You have Owen, you have Maggie, you have your business. Elise has almost nothing right now." It was such a perfect summary of our family that I nearly admired it. Because I had built a life, I deserved less. Because Elise had damaged hers, she deserved more. My stability was treated as proof I could survive another wound. Her chaos became a claim on everyone around her. "I understand," I said. My mother relaxed. "Thank you." "No. I understand who you are choosing. Nora, do not turn this into something ugly." "I did not create the ugliness." "Elise may lose her marriage." "I thought Daniel was in Chicago." Silence. A longer one this time. His work situation changed. "Is Daniel living at home?" "That is private." "You just used their marriage to justify leaving my wedding. It stopped being private when you made me pay for it." "He is staying somewhere else temporarily." "How long have you known?" My mother did not answer. That told me more than any confession. "You knew," I said. "She asked me not to tell anyone." "So you lied to me." I protected her privacy. "You helped her stage a family dinner with my brooch." "Nora, did Daniel know she took it?" "That is not the point." It was exactly the point. The brooch had not been about comfort. It had been a prop. My mother had entered my home and stolen something from me so Elise could perform stability for people who already suspected the truth. "What is she hiding?" I asked. "I cannot discuss this. You can abandon me for it, but you cannot name it." My mother's voice hardened. "I am still attending." "In the back." I thought that would be less disruptive. "To whom?" She did not answer. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, Elise called. I let it ring. She called again. Then sent a message. "Please stop punishing Mom for caring about my children." I read it twice. Not caring about me. Not supporting me. Caring about my children. Elise had already written the version of events she intended to repeat. I was cruel. Mom was trapped. Elise was fragile. The wedding was unfortunate timing. I turned the phone face down and returned to the porcelain bowl. My hands did not shake. That frightened me more than shaking would have. I closed the fracture. Removed the excess adhesive. Matched the glaze. Finished the work because work remained. At 6:30, Owen found me sitting on the studio floor beside the locked cabinet where I kept the brooch. He did not ask why I was there. He sat beside me. For 1 minute, neither of us spoke. "Finally," I said. My mother backed out. "I heard enough of the call. She is coming, but she plans to sit in the last row." "What do you want?" Not what should we do. Not what does she deserve. What do you want? "I don't want to walk alone." "Then you won't." I looked at him. He waited. The idea arrived quietly. Not like lightning. Like something that had been standing in the room for years, waiting for me to notice. "Maggie," I said. Owen's expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. "She bought a navy suit 3 months ago," he said. "She claimed it was for a museum dinner." "I cannot ask her." "Yes, you can. It is too much." "Nora, she gave you her mentor's tools. She moved ceramics across Boston during an ice storm. She watched 4 tutorials on attaching a veil without pulling someone's hair." "What?" She took notes. I covered my face. Owen leaned his shoulder against mine. She has been trying very hard not to overstep. It is making her unbearable. I laughed for the first time that day. The following morning, I drove to Maggie's house. She lived in a red cape near Concord, surrounded by old oaks and bird feeders she insisted the squirrels had no legal right to access. Her garage had been converted into a conservation workspace after retirement. When I arrived, she was examining a cracked stoneware pitcher under a lamp. She wore linen gloves and reading glasses low on her nose. Without looking up, she said, "Coffee is fresh. Owen says you have not eaten enough." Maggie. She looked at me. Whatever she saw made her remove the glasses. What happened? My mother is not walking me on Saturday. Maggie placed the pitcher on a padded stand. She folded her gloves beside it. Then she came around the table. "Do you want me to?" 5 words. No performance of shock. No insult directed at my mother. No speech about what I deserved. A question. A choice. I nodded. "Yes." "What time?" "The ceremony starts at 3. I will be there at 12:30. You do not have to arrive that early." "I know." I planned to inspect everything and annoy the coordinator. That made me cry. I stood between her work table and a shelf of old glazes while she held me. When I could breathe again, she stepped back. "I cannot replace your mother," she said. "I know. I would not try." "I know. But I can walk next to you." That was enough. Before I left, Maggie opened a drawer and removed a narrow strip of blue silk. It came from a scarf she wore during her first year at the museum. "I was going to sew this into the bouquet wrap," she said. "Now I think it should remain visible." She tied it around the handle of my wooden tool case. "What is it for?" I asked. "A reminder." "Of what?" "That being repaired does not mean being returned to who you were before." Thursday moved through logistics. Camille, my best friend, changed the ceremony notes. The venue coordinator reassigned the front row seat. The printed program did not name the person escorting me, so nothing needed to be redone. Owen took Maggie to have her suit altered. She sent me a photograph from the fitting room. Navy jacket. Silver hair. A deeply suspicious expression aimed at the tailor. Owen wrote beneath it. She asked whether the pockets are functional. My mother did not call. Elise sent 3 messages. The first said she hoped I was calming down. The second said Mom was devastated. The third said, "Families are bigger than one day." I did not answer. Thursday evening, Daniel called Owen. Owen put the call on speaker after asking Daniel's permission. "I received the final seating email," Daniel said. "I need you to know I will not be attending." His voice sounded tired. Owen said, "Do you want us to change anything for the girls?" "The girls are with my sister this weekend." Elise said she was bringing them to the wedding, but she did not ask me. I looked at Owen. Daniel continued, "I am not trying to drag you into our separation. I only do not want anyone telling Nora that I stayed away because of her." "Are you in Chicago?" I asked. There was a pause. "No." "How long have you been out of the house?" 3 weeks. My mother had known. The family dinner with the brooch happened 4 days after Daniel left. "What was that dinner?" I asked. Daniel exhaled. "My parents and a financial advisor came. Elise said she wanted to discuss a plan to stabilize things. She arrived wearing the brooch and talking about family history. Did you know it belonged to me?" "No. She said your mother lent it to her." "What was she trying to stabilize?" Another pause. "I do not think I should give you the details." "That is fair." "But Nora, this is not because of your wedding. Elise has been telling people your wedding pushed her over the edge." "It did not." "What did?" "Accounts I did not know existed." The room felt smaller. "What kind of accounts?" "I cannot discuss more before I speak to my attorney." He was careful. Not evasive. Careful. That made the information more believable. Before ending the call, Daniel said, "I am sorry your wedding became part of this." "It did not become part of this," I said. Afterward, Owen stood by the kitchen counter. "So we know Daniel moved out. And Mom helped Elise pretend he had not. We know there are hidden accounts. And we know Mom entered my home to help with that performance." I felt angry. But beneath the anger was something colder. Clarity. My mother had not simply chosen a struggling daughter. She had chosen a lie. Friday morning, Aunt June visited my studio. She was 70, cancer-free for 6 years, with silver curls and the same direct gaze that had once rescued me with the word, "to." She carried a small metal box. "This belonged to your grandmother," she said. Inside were recipe cards, 2 photographs, a dried corsage, and a sealed envelope bearing my name. Grandmother Beatrice had died when I was 19. Aunt June sat across from me at the work table. "She gave this to me during her final winter. She told me to wait until you were getting married." "Why did you never tell me?" "Because I occasionally follow instructions." The envelope was cream-colored and softened at the edges. My name appeared in grandmother's narrow handwriting. The letter was 1 page. "Nora, by the time you read this, I hope you are stepping into a life you chose. Some people will love you and still fail to protect your joy. Some will ask you to disappear because your happiness makes their choices harder to ignore. Do not confuse history with loyalty. Do not confuse guilt with love. The people who deserve to stand beside you are the people who can witness your happiness without trying to reduce it. Choose those people. And when something breaks, be honest about the line. Love, Grandma Beatrice." I read it twice. Aunt June looked toward the locked cabinet. "Is the brooch safe?" "Yes." "Good. Did Grandma know what Mom and Elise were like?" "She noticed." "Why didn't she stop it?" Aunt June rested both hands on the table. "Seeing a pattern and confronting it are different forms of courage." That answer explained my father. It explained my mother. It explained years of relatives saying they had noticed but never intervened. Silence is not neutral simply because it is quiet. Before Aunt June left, she placed the letter in my hand. "You do not have to punish anyone tomorrow," she said. "You only have to stop punishing yourself." Saturday arrived clear and cold. The kind of October day New England uses to apologize for winter. Alder Mill opened at noon. The river moved behind the building, dark and steady. Inside, string lights crossed beneath iron beams. White flowers stood in low ceramic vessels I had made myself. Each rim carried one fine gold line. The ceremony space held 180 chairs. Owen's side filled early. His cousins, friends from architecture school, former clients, members of his firm, Maggie's museum colleagues. My side was smaller but not empty. Camille sat in the front row after completing every emergency task within reach. Aunt June sat beside her holding grandmother's letter. My restoration team occupied 2 rows. Students from my public workshops came. The owner of the antique store where I worked during college drove from Providence. A museum director who once rejected my internship sat beside a collector whose vase I repaired after his cat knocked it from a shelf. People who entered my life through work had stayed long enough to become something more. At 1:40, the coordinator told us my mother had arrived. So had Elise. I stood behind a partition near the upper landing and looked through a narrow opening. My mother wore the silver dress she purchased to walk beside me. She moved carefully, avoiding the front rows. Elise followed in dark green. Emma and Grace were not with them. My mother sat in the last row. Elise sat beside her. 2 empty chairs remained on their right. Attendance without intimacy. Presence as evidence. They would be able to say they came. For 1 second, an old reflex rose inside me. Perhaps Mom will stand. Perhaps the doors will make it real. Perhaps she will finally choose differently. Then, Elise leaned toward her. My mother nodded. The reflex disappeared. Maggie entered the room behind me. Her navy suit fit perfectly. The porcelain brooch was pinned to her left lapel. I stared at it. She touched the silver edge. "You gave me permission," she said. "If you have changed your mind, say so." I had placed the brooch in her hand the previous evening. Not because she was replacing my mother. Because the heirloom belonged with the person willing to carry the responsibility attached to it. I haven't changed my mind. Around Maggie's wrist was the blue strip from her old museum scarf. A matching ribbon wrapped my bouquet. The coordinator stepped closer. 10 minutes. The quartet began tuning downstairs. Owen waited at the far end of the aisle. I could not see him yet, but I could picture the way he would stand. Still, hands loose, eyes searching for me. Aunt June came upstairs and gave me grandmother's letter. I read one line again. "The people who deserve to stand beside you are the people who can witness your happiness without trying to reduce it." I folded the page, placed it inside my dress pocket. Maggie offered her arm. Her hand was steady. A conservator's hand. A hand that had repaired museum pieces, carried crates across ice, marked articles in pencil, and given me tools without asking what she would receive in return. "You ready?" she asked. I looked at the closed doors. "Yes." "Good. Try not to walk faster than me. These shoes are hostile." The music changed. The doors opened. Light moved across the old floorboards. 180 people turned. Maggie and I stepped forward together. A woman in navy. A woman in white. A mother by choice walking beside a daughter who had finally stopped begging to be chosen. I did not look toward the last row. Not immediately. I looked at Owen. He stood beneath the tall brick arch at the far end of the room. His eyes filled before I reached the third step. He smiled. Not the wide smile used in photographs. The private one. The one that said, "I know what this cost." The aisle measured 52 feet. Owen had measured it during rehearsal because architects measure things even when no one asks. 52 feet of maple boards, worn smooth by a century of workers, machines, dinners, arguments, weddings, and people beginning again. Maggie walked slowly, not ceremonially, carefully. Around 10 feet in, people began noticing the last row. Some knew enough to understand. Others simply looked from Maggie to my mother and realized there was a story they had not been told. I kept my eyes forward. At the front, Reverend Susan Park smiled. She was a small woman with silver glasses and the calm voice of someone who had spent 30 years helping frightened people say important things. When we reached the final step, she asked, "Who supports Nora as she enters this marriage?" Maggie looked at me. Then at Owen. "I do," she said, "and so do the people here who have shown her they mean it." That was all. No polished speech. No humiliation. A simple answer. Aunt June began crying. Camille did not bother hiding it. One of my assistants pressed both hands to her mouth. Owen nodded once at Maggie. "Thank you," without sound. Maggie placed my hand in his. Then she leaned closer. "Go," she whispered. "He is about to cry harder than you." I laughed through my own tears. She stepped into the front row and sat in the seat that once carried my mother's name. The new card read Margaret Hale. Front row. Center aisle. My mother sat 50 feet behind her. The ceremony began. When it was time for vows, Owen went first. He spoke about foundations. About structures that become dangerous when people hide damage instead of addressing it. Then it was my turn. I looked at him. I spent much of my life believing love meant becoming easier to keep. Quieter. Less demanding. Less visible. You never asked me to disappear. I choose you. And I choose the life we build when neither of us has to hide the truth to remain loved. Owen closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, he whispered, "Always." We were married at 3:23 in the afternoon. The room stood. The quartet played. People cheered. As Owen kissed me, I heard Aunt June laugh through tears. At the reception, the chairs were arranged around long tables. Candles reflected against the brick walls. Dinner was served family style because I liked the idea of people passing food to one another. Maggie sat beside Aunt June. Camille sat across from them. My mother and Elise were placed near the back with 2 distant cousins and a former neighbor who had once asked my mother why she only talked about one daughter. I did not create that arrangement. Camille did. I did not change it. During dinner, people approached me. A museum director asked about the Children's Recovery Center proposal. A former student told Owen that my workshop helped her return to art after a divorce. The owner of the antique store reminded everyone that I once repaired a lamp for $7 because I had no idea how to price my work. My career filled the room without me defending it. No one called it a hobby. No one called it a little shop. At 4:30, Maggie stood for her toast. She held 1 page of notes but did not read from it. "When Owen first brought Nora to my house," she said, "I tried to impress her with a bowl I restored in 1987. People laughed. She found a problem in the adhesive within 4 minutes. More laughter. I liked her immediately, although I did reconsider inviting her back. She looked at me. Nora is very good at noticing what other people would rather ignore. That is useful in conservation. It is also difficult in families." The room quieted. "She has built a life with patience, skill, and more courage than she gives herself credit for. Owen, take care of her. Nora, allow him to. Neither of you is required to become smaller to keep the other comfortable." Maggie raised her glass. "To a home where truth does not have to whisper." Everyone drank. From the back table, my mother stared at the brooch on Maggie's lapel. She knew what it meant. The heirloom had not been stolen from her. It had been entrusted by me. There is a difference. My mother approached me near the dessert table. I was cutting the first slice of almond cake when I felt her beside me. She smelled like the rose perfume she had worn since I was a child. "Nora." I continued cutting. "Hello, Mom." Maggie gave a lovely speech. She did. My mother looked at the cake knife. I did not know you were asking her. You did not ask what I planned to do. I thought you would walk alone. I placed the slice on a plate. I know. Her face shifted. She had expected the absence she created to remain visible. She expected an empty space where she should have been. She had not expected someone else to fill it with dignity. I am sorry you felt you needed to replace me. I did not replace you. Relief appeared too quickly in her eyes. Then I said, Maggie accepted a role you gave up. The relief vanished. Nora, this is your wedding. Do not make it a punishment. I am cutting cake. You know what I mean. Yes, I usually do. She glanced toward Elise. My sister watched from the back table. Elise is having a very difficult day. Of course she was. My wedding had become difficult for her because people could see me without her standing in front. My wedding is not treatment for Elise's difficult day. She may lose everything. She already lost Daniel. My mother's face changed. Who told you? Daniel called Owen. That was not his story to share. He told us he would not attend. He told me he moved out. He did not tell me details. My mother lowered her voice. You should not involve yourself. You involved me when you walked away from my wedding to protect the lie. I was protecting the girls. No, you were protecting Elise from being seen. That is unfair. Did you know about the accounts? My mother looked toward the floor. That answer was enough. What accounts? Elise asked behind us. She had crossed the room without my noticing. My mother turned. Elise, not here. My sister looked at me. What did Daniel tell you? Only that there were accounts he did not know about. Her face drained of color. You called him? He called Owen. You have no right to discuss my marriage. You made your marriage the reason Mom abandoned me. I did not make her do anything. You threatened to keep the girls away. I told her I needed support. You told her supporting me would cost her access to your children. That is not the same. It is exactly the same. People nearby pretended not to listen. I lowered my voice further. I did not want a performance. I wanted an end. Elise said. You have no idea what has happened to me. You are right, I do not know all of it. Then stop judging. I know Daniel moved out. I know you told everyone he was in Chicago. I know you used my brooch at a meeting where you were trying to convince his family that things were normal. Her eyes moved to the brooch on Maggie. You gave that to her. Yes. That belongs to our family. It belongs to me. You always have to prove something. The sentence arrived sharp and immediate. There it was. Not the debt. Not Daniel. Not the girls. The competition she believed we had been having since childhood. I was getting married, I said. What did you think I was trying to prove? That you won. The room around us seemed to recede. My mother closed her eyes. Elise continued. The business, the venue, Owen. His mother treating you like some kind of genius. Mom talking about your dress. Everyone acting like you built this perfect life without anyone. I did build my life. You think that makes you better than me? No. You wanted everyone to see me falling apart while you stood there in white. I did not know Daniel had left until Thursday. You knew something was wrong. Yes. Because you used Mom and your daughters to damage my wedding. Elise looked at Owen. He stood several feet away, close enough if I needed him, far enough to let me speak for myself. You always wanted this, she said again. What? To finally be the successful one. I looked at my sister. For 33 years, I had believed there was a version of our relationship hidden beneath the rivalry. A real sisterhood waiting for the pressure to stop. That afternoon, I understood the pressure was not hiding the relationship, it was the relationship. We were never supposed to be competing, I said. Elise laughed once. You say that because you finally won. No, I say it because I am done letting you score my life. She stared at me. I continued. I will not discuss your finances with anyone. I will not expose you for entertainment, but I will also not pretend Mom made a loving choice. And I will not allow you to use your children, your marriage, or your next emergency to control what happens in my life. My mother reached for Elise's arm. Elise pulled away. Then she looked at the room. At Maggie in the front. At Aunt June. At my colleagues. At Owen. At the people speaking about my work as though it mattered. Her eyes filled. You have everyone, she whispered. It was not an apology, but it was the first honest thing she had said. No, I answered. I have the people I stopped pushing away while I waited for you and Mom. Elise turned and walked toward the restroom. My mother followed. The old pattern completed itself. This time, I did not follow either of them. I turned to Owen. Dance with me. The first dance was ours. The second was announced as a family dance. Maggie met me beneath the string lights. She was not an elegant dancer. Neither was I. She counted under her breath during the first 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, do not fall. I heard that. You were meant to. The song was an acoustic version of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Owen had selected it without telling me. Maggie held one of my hands and rested the other carefully on my shoulder. You are shaking, she said. I know. Do you want to stop? No. Good. I hate wasting a song. We kept moving. Around us, other people joined the floor. Aunt June danced with Camille. Owen danced with one of his younger cousins. At the edge of the room, my mother watched. Elise remained in the restroom for nearly 20 minutes. When she came out, her makeup had been repaired, but her eyes were swollen. She placed her purse over one shoulder. My mother approached her near the exit. They spoke. Elise shook her head. Then she left alone. My mother stayed another half hour. She did not approach me again. She left before all the cake was served. Aunt June later found her silver wedding program on the empty chair beside her. A souvenir from a ceremony she had attended but refused to enter. Monday morning, I opened Second Fire at 7. Marriage had not altered the kiln schedule. A museum crate waited near the loading door. My team had hung a banner above the workbench. Mrs. Hale Bennett, please take 1 day off. I did not. At 8, Owen arrived with coffee and 2 breakfast sandwiches. At 9, Maggie came carrying the wooden tool case. She had added a small brass plate beneath the painted sentence. For Nora, who never needed permission to take her work seriously. I ran my thumb over the engraving. You did not have to do this. I know. She placed a wrapped package beside it. Inside was the porcelain brooch. The clasp had been polished. The scratch I repaired remained visible only under strong light. Keep it locked, Maggie said. I will. Not because someone may steal it. I looked at her. Because sharing a history does not give everyone unlimited access to what survived it. My phone vibrated at noon. A message from my mother. Can we talk? I read it. Then turned the phone over. I had spent years answering immediately because delay felt dangerous. Mom might become upset. Elise might react. The girls might be withheld. A holiday might be ruined. Someone might accuse me of cruelty. That morning, I discovered nothing happened when I did not answer. The kiln continued heating. The river moved behind the building. The museum crate waited. My life did not collapse because my mother had to sit with the consequence of her decision for a few more hours. She called twice that week. I let both calls go to voicemail. The first message was defensive. I know you are angry, but I hope you will eventually understand the position I was in. The second was softer. I should not have expected you to walk alone. Neither message contained the words, I was sorry. I did not respond. Elise sent nothing. For the first time in my life, her silence did not feel like a sentence. It felt like space. 3 weeks after the wedding, I received an email from the Boston Children's Recovery Center. They had narrowed the ceramics project to 2 finalists and wanted me to present my proposal in person. I read the message 3 times, then called Maggie. She said, "Good. Your budget section is still too timid." That was how she celebrated. Not with empty praise. With a demand that I stop underpricing myself. 6 weeks after the wedding, my mother sent a letter. It was handwritten on plain white paper. Nora, I have started this 4 times. I keep wanting to explain what I was afraid of. Every explanation sounds like I am asking you to excuse me. Elise told me that if I walked with you, she would not let me see Emma and Grace. But I also believed you would forgive me eventually, because you always had before. That is difficult to admit. I sat in the back and watched Maggie walk beside you. I wanted to stand up. I did not. I am sorry I left you alone before you found someone else to walk with. I am sorry I took the brooch from your apartment. I knew Daniel had moved out. I knew there were financial problems. I did not know everything, but I helped Elise pretend the problem was smaller than it was. I told myself I was keeping the family together. I was mostly trying to keep her from becoming angry with me. I do not know how to repair this. Mom. The letter was imperfect. There was no promise that therapy would transform her. No polished understanding of our entire family. No request for immediate forgiveness. Only several facts she had finally stopped avoiding. I placed it inside the wooden tool case beneath grandmother's letter. I did not reply. 2 weeks later, Aunt June called. Your mother started seeing a counselor, she said. Did she ask you to tell me? No, I asked her what she was doing besides writing letters. That sounded like Aunt June. Is she still seeing Elise every day? Not every day. Why? Elise told her the girls were unavailable, until she apologized for embarrassing her at the wedding. My body tightened. What did Mom do? She said she would not apologize for attending her daughter's wedding. It was a small sentence. It should have been obvious. In my family, it was evidence. Aunt June added, do not confuse one correct answer with a changed person. I won't. My mother lasted 12 days before calling Elise again. Elise refused to let her see the girls for nearly a month. My mother left me a voicemail during the second week. I understand now why I kept giving in, she said. The silence is terrible. I listened once, then deleted it. Understanding discomfort was not the same as changing. She needed to survive the silence without making me responsible for it. 2 months after the wedding, Elise called. I was at the Children's Recovery Center preparing for my final presentation. Her name appeared on my screen. I considered ignoring it, then answered. Nora. Her voice sounded tired. Hello, Elise. Daniel filed for divorce. I leaned against a bare wall. I'm sorry the girls are going through that. She paused. Not I am sorry for you, she noticed. He wants full financial disclosure. That is normal in a divorce. You do not understand. No, I don't. Silence. Then she said, I need money for an attorney. There it was. The first contact in 2 months. Not an apology. Not a question about my life. A request. How much? 25,000. I'm not lending you money. You did not even think about it. I thought about it for years before you asked. That makes no sense. It makes complete sense to me. She began speaking faster. Daniel froze the joint accounts. Mom cannot help. I cannot access the education funds because the court is reviewing everything. The education funds. The phrase stopped me. What happened to the girls' accounts? She went quiet. Elise. I borrowed from them. How much? I was going to replace it. How much? 190,000. The wall behind me felt suddenly cold. Those accounts had been funded by Daniel's parents, birthday gifts, and money set aside for Emma and Grace. You took nearly $200,000 from your daughters? I moved it temporarily. For what? Expenses. What expenses? The mortgage, the renovations, school tuition, credit cards, the ski trips. Do not start. The car. I said I was going to replace it. With what? She had no answer. The hidden accounts Daniel mentioned were not only credit cards. Elise had moved money from her daughter's education funds to maintain a life she could no longer afford. Then she used those same daughters to control our mother. The cruelty of it was almost elegant. You told Mom you were protecting the girls, I said. I am their mother. You used them as leverage while spending their money. I called because I need help. You called because the people who always rescued you have begun saying no. That is what family is for. No, that is what you trained us to believe. Her voice hardened. So you are just going to let me lose everything? You made decisions. The consequences belong to those decisions. I knew this wedding would change you. The wedding did not change me. It showed me what continuing like this would cost. She began crying. This time, I did not rush to soften my voice. I cannot go to prison, she said. Are you facing criminal charges? I do not know. Then you need a lawyer you can afford, and you need to tell the truth. You sound like Daniel. He may be right. She ended the call. 2 minutes later, my mother called. I did not answer. She left a message. Elise says you refuse to help her. I am not asking you to give her money. I only want to understand what happened. That was progress and manipulation mixed together. She was not demanding, but she was still entering as messenger. I sent one text. I will not discuss Elise through you. My mother responded 20 minutes later. Understood. The following day, Elise sent a message accusing me of enjoying her collapse. I did not reply. A week later, she sent another. You always wanted to be better than me. I did not reply to that either. Then she went silent for 4 months. During those 4 months, I won the Children's Recovery Center contract. Not as a reward for getting married. Not because the universe decided I had suffered enough. I won because I had spent months researching adaptive equipment, meeting therapists, revising budgets, and refusing Maggie's repeated attempts to add 3 additional sinks. Construction began in March. Owen helped redesign the ventilation system after the first contractor underestimated the kiln requirements. Maggie reviewed the storage plan and insulted the shelving. Aunt June volunteered to organize the opening reception. My mother heard about the project through Aunt June. She did not call me. Instead, a card arrived at the studio. Congratulations. I know how long you worked for this. No request. No explanation. No mention of Elise. I placed the card in a drawer. I did not throw it away. I did not frame it. That was where our relationship stood. Not restored. Not destroyed. Awaiting evidence. Over the next 6 months, my mother made several small choices. She stopped pressuring Aunt June to mediate. When Elise withheld the girls again, Mom did not call me for comfort. She hired an attorney to establish a formal grandparent visitation arrangement only after Daniel suggested mediation. She attended one of my public lectures and sat in the 3rd row. Afterward, she waited until my students had spoken with me. Then she said, "I did not understand how technical your work is." Years earlier, that sentence would have hurt. Now it felt like an admission of laziness. "You could have asked," I said. "I know." She did not defend herself. She did not say I had never explained. She simply nodded. Change, I learned, often looks unimpressive from a distance. It is someone not saying the familiar harmful thing. It is a person remaining in discomfort instead of passing it to you. It is one choice repeated when no one is applauding. My mother still made mistakes. At Thanksgiving, she asked whether I would reconsider inviting Elise because the girls deserved a normal holiday. I said no. She became quiet. Then she said, "I am disappointed." "That is allowed." She looked surprised. In our family, disappointment had always been used as a weapon. I treated it like an emotion. She did not mention Elise again that evening. 4 months after requesting money, Elise sent me a letter. It contained no apology, only 3 sentences. "I have taken a position at a smaller firm. The court approved a repayment plan for the girls' accounts. I still think you abandoned me when I needed help, but I know now that giving me money would have delayed what I had to face." It was not warmth. It was not reconciliation. It was more honest than anything she had sent before. I wrote back 1 sentence. "I hope you keep repaying them." She did not answer. A year after the wedding, the children's ceramics studio opened. 42 teenagers enrolled during the first month. Some repaired bowls. Some created new ones. Some smashed practice tiles deliberately because destruction felt safer when chosen. One girl named Sophia brought in a mug her father had broken during an argument. She wanted to repair it but did not want the fracture hidden. We filled the line with dark blue lacquer. When it dried, she held the mug beneath the light. "It looks stronger," she said. "It is not stronger because it broke," I told her. "It is stronger because you decided what happened next." At the opening exhibition, Owen stood beside me near the entrance. Maggie wore the navy suit again, although she complained the shoulders felt different. Aunt June carried grandmother's letter in her purse because she believed important documents should travel with reliable women. The porcelain brooch was pinned to my jacket. My mother arrived alone. She stopped several feet away. Her eyes moved to the brooch. "It looks right on you," she said. "Thank you." She did not ask to touch it. She did not say grandmother would want us to forget the past. She did not mention Elise. She walked through the exhibition and read every student's description. Near the end of the afternoon, she asked whether there was anything she could do. I handed her a box of paper cups. She carried it to the refreshment table. No speech. No tears. No demand for recognition. For the first time in my life, my mother helped without asking me to make the weight lighter first. Elise did not attend. She sent flowers with no card. I recognized the arrangement because the florist called to confirm the address. I placed them near the entrance. I did not assign them a meaning they had not earned. That evening, after the final guests left, Maggie helped stack programs. Owen carried display stands into storage. Aunt June wrapped leftover cake in enough foil to interfere with airport security. My mother gathered empty cups. We were not a healed family. We were a group of people making different choices in the same room. That was more honest. I used to believe family was a permanent assignment, a role given at birth, a list of names printed on the same holiday card. I no longer believe that. Family is not proven by access. It is proven by responsibility. By the person who can stand near your joy without trying to dim it. By the person who asks what you need instead of deciding what you should endure. By the person who arrives early. By the person who carries the crate. By the person who respects the locked cabinet. By the person who understands that love does not grant unlimited permission to harm. My mother chose my sister 3 days before my wedding. For years, I would have called that the worst thing she ever did to me. Now, I understand it was also the final time I allowed her choice to determine my value. The doors opened. I walked forward. The woman beside me was not the woman who gave birth to me. She was the woman who had earned the right to stand there. That was not revenge, in the loud, destructive sense. No one was dragged from the room. No glass was thrown. No private records were displayed for strangers. The justice was quieter. My mother saw someone else accept the responsibility she surrendered. My sister discovered that my happiness could continue without her permission. And I learned that an abandoned role does not create an empty life. Sometimes the sweetest ending is not convincing the people who hurt you to finally choose you. Sometimes it is realizing you are no longer standing still, waiting for their decision. Has your family ever used your strength as an excuse to keep hurting you? Share your experience below. Like this video. And subscribe to Calm Deception Stories for more stories about women who stop begging for approval and begin choosing themselves.